This is what South Korea's latest psychopathic killer looks like. A terrifying, bone-chilling case of curiosity gone way too far. Jung Yoo Jung is a true crime fanatic turned murderer. And here, she's walking down the street with the dismembered body of her victim in that very suitcase. Today we're talking about Jung Yoo Jung. I don't know if you've ever heard of that name, but it's a case that happened earlier in June, so earlier this month. So Jung Yoo Jung, she's like this South Korean girl. She was 23 years old, and earlier this month on June 2nd, she was indicted for murder that she confessed to. So basically, Jung Yoo Jung was like, she's this true crime fanatic, and she was obsessed with like criminal cases and just watching that on TV, reading about it in books. And it was just a case of true crime fanatic gone like way too obsessed. She was so curious about like the psychology behind why people commit crimes and why murderers are murderers, and she wanted to experience what it was like or what it felt like to kind of commit a crime of that degree. So that's basically what she did. She wanted to do the real thing herself. So police actually found, when she actually got caught, is that she had 3 months of a search history of her just searching up stuff like how to hide a corpse and get rid of a body, and just pretty much how to deal with a body after you've killed somebody, which is kind of creepy. Yeah, they went through her entire phone and everything, and like the local library said she would like take out books about crime, and her like watch history on TV, it was just all true crime stuff. So it was just very clear that that was something that she was super into, to the point where it was very unhealthy, and to the point where she just kind of descended into madness herself. She actually was recently like diagnosed with psychopathy, so she is a known South Korean psychopath now. It was kind of a case of like, was she just really obsessed with it and it just kind of went too far, or does she actually have like a neurological disorder? So she is a psychopath, which I would, to commit a crime to this degree, and we're gonna talk about it, like just kind of the details and stuff. Obviously, trigger warning, I guess. It gets a little gruesome. I'm not really gonna go too into it or anything like that, but yeah, it was a very scary kind of like case. It was definitely like a really scary case. So yeah, like I said, she was obsessed with true crime. She wanted to replicate it. She wanted to do the thing herself. So she had been planning this, premeditating this murder that she was gonna commit for a long time now, for a couple of months, and it was time to find the victim, to find the target. So she was searching online and she was looking for somebody to be the victim, and she stumbled upon this app that kind of connects parents of like students with private tutors, like freelance tutors. So she was like, okay, that's it. That's where I'm gonna find the victim. So she signs up for this app, and she's pretending to be the mother of like a 9th grader. So she signs up, she's pretending to be this mom, she's contacting this one tutor. There's no really any information about the tutor that's been revealed. But yeah, she's messaging this tutor and scheduling this time to meet up, posing as the parent, like, oh, like, let me schedule you and my daughter, like, to go have a tutoring session, etc., etc. And they planned a date and everything, and that was all set in stone. So leading up to the tutoring session, she goes online and she buys this school uniform off the internet so that she can pose as the student for this tutoring session. So the day of comes, the scheduled tutoring session is here, and she's all dressed up, she's disguised as a student, and you can see this is what she looks like. So she kind of looks like she could pass as like a high schooler or as a 9th grader for sure. It's just like the Asian genetics. So she's wearing a school uniform and she's dressed like a student, and she just pulls up to the tutor's house, right? The tutor doesn't really suspect anything of it. It's like, oh, I'm just scheduled to meet with this 9th grader and I'm gonna teach her yada yada yada, right? Because she's done a bunch of sort of tutoring sessions through this app. It's like a legit app. So yeah, Jung Yoo Jung pulls up and she like gets inside. There's obviously no red flags yet, right? It's just a student. Gets inside, and then not even like very long into the tutoring session, Jung Yoo Jung literally just stabs the tutor, like stabs the tutor, like fatally stabbed. It didn't take very long before she dead, right? But it gets a lot worse. It gets a lot worse because she had come to this tutoring session prepared. So before she pulled up, she had bought garbage bags, she had bought bleach, she had bought a suitcase as well, and she brought that all with her to this tutoring session. Obviously, she's searched up on the internet, how do I get rid of body, how do I clean up? So she's in the house, she's dealing with the body, she's cleaning up and everything, and she decides to dismember this dead body of the tutor. So she's, you know, cutting her up, putting different parts in garbage bags. She's putting certain parts in the suitcase that she's brought with her, just so she could have that all organized. She's planned that out meticulously in her head because she's a true crime fanatic. She's read a lot about it, heard a lot about it, seen a lot about it. So has this everything planned out to a T. So yeah, like I said, some parts are in the suitcase, some parts are in garbage bags that she ends up bringing to her house, right? And this is a really creepy photo that I'm about to show you right now. This is Jung Yoo Jung with the suitcase that she brought to the tutor's house, to the scene of the crime. In that suitcase is the dismembered body, or parts of the dismembered body of the person that she just murdered. So she's just walking around the street with this suitcase, right? Strolling down the street. And if you just kind of look at her, all the cars passing by looking at her, you know, you wouldn't think too much about it. Oh, it's just a woman walking down the street with a suitcase, right? There's not, you know, nothing too suspicious about it, realistically. They think she's traveling, going back and forth, commuting and whatnot. But nobody would suspect just how dark and twisted it is and what's actually inside that suitcase. I'm going to show you a little bit of this surveillance footage that was found of Jung Yoo Jung when she was walking around after she committed the crime. And it's freaking freaky. Look. So the surveillance footage, she's just walking around with the suitcase. She's got a pep in her step. Like nothing is wrong, just walking around with that suitcase with something super deadly inside of it. Like nothing is wrong. Isn't that insane? Yeah. So that's basically, she's got body parts in that suitcase and she's walking around with her hair swinging, you know, with her back straight, walking around with pep in her step like it's just a regular day. By the way, hi JF Lee. Sorry if I'm not like saying hi to everybody as people come in. I'm just like talking about the case. Please feel free to go back in the VOD as well if you want to. I've been talking about it for a little bit already, but if you want to go back and watch it, please go ahead. And then we're gonna do discussion after. But yeah. Anyway, yeah, everything was cleaned up. She bleached the place. She put the body in the suitcase. She put it in the garbage bags, and she then takes the victim's ID, victim's cell phone, and her wallet. So what her plan was, because she's watched all of these cases and she's watched all of these like real like true crime stories, she's like paid a lot of attention to it. Her plan was to pocket everything, so it made it seem like the victim just up and disappeared, you know, to just make it not as suspicious so that it wouldn't be pinpointed back to her. She wanted it to make it seem like the tutor just left, you know, left the country, got out of here, just went ghost. That was essentially the plan, and she took everything with her. And then Jung Yoo Jung calls a taxi driver, right, to come pick her up and to take her to this secluded wooden area, right? She's like thinking that she's pulled this off, she's done it, you know, no one suspects a thing, etc., etc. But that taxi driver was like, ma'am, something is wrong. And I think they did find traces of blood on the seat that she was sitting on, like obviously because of the, you know, the suitcase, right? There were traces of blood in the car, and the taxi driver already was kind of suspicious, like what is she doing walking around like with this like suitcase? Her demeanor was probably a little bit off. I mean, I feel like everybody would be a little bit off in that case, even if you're a psychopath. I don't know if necessarily how she hit it or if she hit it that well, but this taxi driver did not, like, he was high alert. He knew something just felt off, like something just didn't feel right. So the taxi driver calls the police after he drops her off and is like, hey, this is the location of this girl. Like, this is, this is suspicious. She's got this suitcase, blah, blah, blah. Giving all the details, right? So the police are like, okay, like, we gotta come check this out. This doesn't sound right. So the police arrive on scene of that secluded wooded area, and they find, like, the body parts that she stashed away in the suitcase in the wooden area. And then obviously they're like, okay, well, they know the details of this girl pretty much. And so they go to her house, they go to Jung Yoo Jung's home, and they find the rest of the tutor's body in, like, garbage bags, like, around the house. And it's like, oh my god, what just happened? This is crazy, right? It's like, you wouldn't suspect it. She literally disguised herself as a student. She pretended to be a mother on a tutoring app just to find a victim, and then disguised herself as a student, showed up to the tutoring session, and then murdered her, and then dismembered the body. It was definitely the work of somebody who had been, planning this for a long time. It was definitely a very premeditated murder. She had everything planned out to the T, right? From how she's gonna find the victim, what she was gonna wear, what the plan was, what the story was, how she was gonna get rid of the body, what she was gonna do with it, what would happen to the victim afterwards, what was that story. She had all of that planned out before she even pulled up to the tutor's house. So obviously they arrest her. She's in custody, and Jung Yoo Jung goes, oh, like, me and this tutor, we got into this really heated argument, and that's what happened, like, that's what led to the incident and everything like that. But it was like, nobody really believed that. Like, the police, like I said, they looked through her phone and saw her searching through, like, true crime stuff on how to hide a body and all of this like very dark and twisted information that she clearly utilized to kind of carry out this murder. So they were like, there's no way that this was just like a heat of the moment accident. There's no way that you guys got into a fight and it was self-defense. It's just not possible, right? They found tons of holes in her story, and Jung Yoo Jung's family themselves was like, you have to confess. Like, don't do this, don't lie, don't do all of that, just confess. Just tell the truth. And so she did. She said, she expressed some sorrow, and she was like, I feel guilty and everything like that. And then the like press like talked to her about it, and they were like, how do you feel, and why did you do this? And she said that she was like out of her mind and that she doesn't know why she did it, etc., etc. It seemed like it was just so out of character for her.
살인 충동을 혹시 언제부터 느끼신 걸까요?
피해자는 유가족께 할 말 없습니까?
피해자와 유가족분들에게 전 진심으로 죄송합니다.
살해 후에 여러 차례 집을 오가셨는데 혹시 이유가 있었을까요?
실종 사건으로 위장하려고 했습니까?
제정신이 아니었던 것 같습니다. 죄송합니다.
So the police are running tests on her to see if she has any neurological disorders and how do I say this? Psychopathy, if she's a psychopath, pretty much, right? They're running all these tests and they're checking to see, like, poking around, see, like, what's wrong with her. Is it really a case of just a true crime fanatic getting way too deep into their passions, getting way too deep into their hobbies, and being too impressionable by these cases? Or is it a case of a psychopath being formed? And recently, yeah, it was confirmed that, Jung Yoo Jung was a psychopath. There's definitely something that was wrong with her mentally, and obviously all of that was facilitated by her obsession with true crime, right? Definitely that was like a big part of everything, and that's what led her to do what she did. I mean, what she said, her justification for it, or like her reasoning for why she committed the murder, was that she was just curious as to how it would feel. Like, she was curious to be in the mind of a murderer. Like, she just wanted to be in the body or in the footsteps of them and just to see what that's like. And it's like, wow, that's like taking being a true crime fan to an extreme level. So that's essentially what happened, and that's the case so far. Obviously she's guilty, and she's being indicted for murder and all that, but it's just like a really eye-opening case of like we are constantly desensitized. Even me right now, I'm telling you guys about this story, which is inherently super, super messed up, but I'm like just talking about it super calmly, and we're all reacting to it like kind of calmly. It's because we always hear about all this stuff all the time, and we are a little desensitized to it. So it's like, you know, what is too far? What is too much exposure to stuff like this? Like, you know. Hi Brian. Hi Sloth. Sorry, I was in my like YouTube video mode, guys. I was just really going through this case, so I wasn't really saying hi in the chat. But how is everybody? How are you? Yeah. We always have like all these memes, or like people are always saying like, "Oh, my girl is so into true crime, and like my girl watches true crime to go to bed, and she like listens to all these gruesome podcasts, etc., etc." All of that stuff, and it's like, are we too desensitized to this kind of stuff? Like, when is it like too much? You know? It was like a huge case that shocked South Korea for sure. I definitely feel like in North America or in the West, it's a little bit more normalized to be that deep into something like true crime. I think like we have so many of our trending podcasts and YouTube videos and all of that is like conspiracy theories and true crime cases, and that's what everybody's talking about, what's on the news, what's on the media all the time. But like something like this, I feel like is a bit of like a newer territory for somewhere like South Korea. So everyone was like, holy, this is insane. And it was like a big shock because it was like a very unique and terrifying case, because she posed as both a parent of a student and a student to go to a tutoring session. And now I'm pretty sure people are like shook up, like, oh my god, tutoring is such like a normal thing. Students go to after school tutoring till like 10 p.m. over there. They're always doing like side tutors on the weekends and just like bettering their studies and all that. And something that was so common and that pretty much every person or every like young person engages in South Korea, like having a murder tied to that, and those like tutoring apps being a way for a psychopath to get their hands on a victim. It's like, holy, it's like it feels like a big part of their life is being questioned right now, and like the safety of something that they've been doing for so long. I know, it's crazy. It's also really scary. I don't know, because it got me thinking, right? Oh, like, you know, we already know that there's so many murderers that have done some pretty unique and terrifying, of course, ways of like luring their victims in. But I feel like a common thing that we hear is like, oh, somebody like you charmed their way in, or it was like a partner or like a friend or somebody that they know or something like that, right? But this was just a case of a evil mastermind. Like, oh my god, it was so evil. The way that she just planned out everything to the T, and every detail was just meticulously pinpointed. It was just like, do you know how much you have to think about? Like, how much you have to think about that, and how much you would want to commit this crime for you to come up with such an elaborate scheme? It's like really scary. Like you saw that footage of her just walking around on the street. Like, we could play it back, but like, look at her just walking around the street. Like, you wouldn't even suspect anything. Like, if I saw her walking down the street, I wouldn't even like look twice. Like, I wouldn't really think twice. I'd just be like, oh, she's coming back from the airport, or she's coming back from university or something. I wouldn't even question or think there's anything wrong. She just looks like a regular woman walking down the street, you know, carrying some clothes. Like, I wouldn't even blink twice, which is what makes it so terrifying. Literally what makes it so terrifying. It had me second guessing quite literally anybody that walks down the street. I was like looking at some old lady the other day. Like, she was just had the little like, you know, those little grocery carts that you push around. And I was like, is there a head in there? It's just got me questioning quite literally everything. So and it's just all because she was curious. All because she wanted to know. It's actually a thing. I think about this a lot, from boy. Like, am I walking past a murderer? Because what was it? The statistic? There was some statistic is that like it's more common than you think, unfortunately, that you'd walk past somebody that has committed like a serious or terrifying crime. Is scary to think about. Like, I honestly think about that a lot. It's a thought that kind of not consumes my mind, but it like runs through my head a lot. It's like anybody that I'm talking to, anybody new that I meet, even somebody that I known for a while, you don't know what causes their mental to snap, or if there's anything so deep within their psyche that they have just hiding away that can be brought out by, I don't know, whatever trigger or something, some life event. Like, you don't know what can cause somebody to descend literally into madness and hurt somebody. I like it's like I've already had trust issues, but I have even more trust issues. But it's also bad to have because you don't know. It could literally be anybody. So it's like, do you go through life not trusting a single person ever, and you know, never having a relationship with anyone ever? Like, it's scary. Yeah, because I mean, I feel like everybody does have like a really intrusive thought sometimes. I'm sure like you guys have had it too. I've had it like randomly. I'll just be like having some random thought, and I'd be like, even as like intrusive thoughts, like you're just driving your car and you're like, what if I just crash? What if I just drive into a tree? What if I just slam on the freaking gas and just go so fast and just fly out the window? You know, it's just even things like that. You're like, oh my God, why am I thinking that? Right? Why is that something that I have some sort of desire to do? It's like, what? Why is that there? And then you're like, what if you let the intrusive thoughts win? That's what people do. Literally, like, I feel like a lot of the times murderers, or even like true, like any sort of like crime that involves like violence or, you know, abuse or anything, like it's like a burst heat of the moment intrusive thought that they just put into fruition, and there were just like a lot of, it's just suddenly in a blink it happened, right? Because you hear about that all the time in the news and everything like that. It was like, it was a crime of passion, or it was, they were in a heated argument and they were like this. Obviously in this case it wasn't, but just overall, right? It's like, I never want to step on anyone's toes ever. Oh my God, that's just what happens to me. You know, when people stop beating the poro. But it was I have friends that are so confrontational. My sister is really confrontational. Like, you know, when people are just like really calm, cool, and collected on the outside, but you just know deep down something, there's just this burning rage that's wanting to come out. That's my sister. She's like an accountant, and every day she's just like hunched over the computer on a spreadsheet, you know, just calculating, doing taxes. She's on her Zoom meetings like, oh, of course, yeah, our quarterly reports, like, you know, sounding super professional and super collected and just very polished. And the moment she's off work, oh my gosh, driving in a car with my sister, like sitting in the car, is a terrifying experience. Literally, because she has the worst case of road rage I've ever seen from somebody. She's absolutely terrifying when angry on the road. Like, she's the type of person, she will roll down the window, flip them off, screaming, yelling, shouting. She's a 5'2" Asian woman with a 2-year-old at home. She cannot fight. Shorty cannot box nobody. So the fact that she talks up so much, it makes me worried. And also I swear it's the small people. Like the shorter people. I'm not very tall. I'm 5'3", but I'm taller than my sister. And my other friend, my roommate, she's been in my chat a couple times. Her name's Tao. She's like 5'1". And she is one ball of anger. She will try to box you, but she's 5'1". You know, a strong gust of wind and she's on the floor. So I'm like, why do you have such big cojones? Right? I'm terrified. I'm genuinely terrified. If I beef the wrong person, I'm gonna get stabbed. Because that's what's happening a lot, like where I'm from, like in Toronto. Like, there's so many cases of people just looking at someone the wrong way and suddenly they're stabbed and they're just on the subway. I'm just like, I'm protecting my peace and my life by not getting into altercations and just letting things slide. That's literally what I do, and that's also how I justify being a pushover for sure. Like, people can step all over me and I'll be like, I'm not gonna piss you off because I don't want to die. But, you know, I'm also kind of a pussy, so I guess that works. Yeah, like, another story that I had was, what was it? My sister, again, we were at, like, we were out on, like, a family outing last weekend, and we had to line up on a really long line to get back on the ferry to go back to the city. And this guy, like, this man and his, like, young daughter butt us in line, and she is all hell let loose, literally. She's like yelling at this guy. She's like, no, you're not butting us, you're not butting us. And she was like getting so mad, I swear I could see like smoke coming out of her ears. And she said the most fire bar that I would, low-key, if somebody said that to me in front of my kid, I would not take that. But she was like, if I were you, I would set a good example for my child and not do this. I was like, she really beefing this dude while her 2-year-old daughter is sitting around on a little bicycle. I was like, wow. It's always the people who are very calm on the outside who don't seem like anything, like, don't seem like they would get mad to be terrified of. Because Jung Yoo Jung of this case, she was just like this kind of like, she kept to herself a lot, very like reclusive. She hasn't really made many friends outside of like high school. She graduated and she just kept to herself, you know. She was just always at home doing her own thing, not really bothering anybody, not really going anywhere. And this is what happened. Nobody would have suspected her to be a perpetrator of something like this, but yet there she was. I was assuming she was spending all those years in her apartment just reading up on stuff like this.